Welcome to the lesson on virtue ethics or virtue theory. You may know people that have internalized their moral convictions, and as a result, they're able to really quickly decide on what the right thing to do is in certain situations without really having to think about it too much or struggle with what is the right thing to do. These people have internalized a set of virtues that they use to guide their moral decision making. So, what exactly are we talking about when we talk about virtue ethics? Well, virtues are simply behaviors or dispositions that we have learned, and they result in habitual acts of moral goodness. The key words in this definition are learned and habitual. It simply says that moral behavior can be learned and it can also be practiced so that those behaviors become habits. And thus, whenever we're challenged with a moral decision, we can quickly and easily come to the right decision based on these virtues that we hold. This theory emphasizes that the important thing in moral decision making is your character. We should seek to acquire ideal character traits rather than follow moral rules because we're aspiring to be the ideal person and we want to be a moral person rather than someone who just follows a set of moral rules. Virtues can be both moral or they can be morally neutral. An example of moral virtues are things like honesty, fairness, kindness, and virtues that are more neutral are things like courage and self-control and having patience. You've probably always heard that saying that patience is a virtue. Well, it is. It's a morally neutral virtue. Virtue ethics, the whole concept of this theory, really is looking at the heart of the person, emphasize on being a moral person rather than just doing moral things or acting in moral ways. The opposite of virtues are vices, and these are things that are immoral, they're wicked behavior, they're the exact opposite of things that we think of as being virtuous. So some vices would be doing lots of things to excess, like overeating, drinking too much, smoking too much, and those kinds of things. Virtues also provide the foundation for codes of ethics, and a code is really nothing more than maybe a defined list of virtues. Here's a list of Plato's cardinal virtues, and he only had four in this list, but he said that prudence or wisdom was very important. He means by that using critical thinking to come to the right solutions or right conclusions about that issue. He also said temperance was very important to living the good life, which simply means keeping us from doing things to excess, restraining our passions like overeating, gluttony, drinking too much, doing those kinds of things. In other words, moderation in everything we do is okay. Courage or fortitude is also important to living the good life. If we can overcome our fears, it helps us remain very consistent and very steady when we face obstacles in life. And finally, justice is giving everyone their rightful due. I don't know how many of you watch soap operas, but there's a soap opera called All My Children, and one of the matrons of that show is an actress named Susan Lucci, and a lot of you may know who she is. But the thing about justice as it relates to Susan Lucci is that she was nominated 18 years in a row for Best Actress in a Daytime Drama. And she didn't get it 18 years. And finally, the 19th nomination, she won the Best Actress Award. And a lot of people felt like that was justice, that she got her rightful due, even though it was kind of late. She finally got her Best Actress Award. So Codes of ethics are common in almost every profession. You know, the lawyers have a code of ethics. Doctors try to follow the Hippocratic Oath that describes how they behave with patients. Engineers and architects have a codes of ethics that describe how they design things with the purpose of them being safe as well as useful. Bankers and accountants, codes of ethics on how to handle your money. Even government employees and faculty members at universities have a code of ethics that guide them. Even pirates have a code of ethics, even though the pirates might say they're more guidelines than actual rules. But even pirates have a code of ethics. Why do we need codes of ethics? Well, for one thing, they define what is acceptable behavior within a profession. So they define within that profession what a conflict of interest is. An example would be a legislator who supports a bill that would eventually benefit a business that they own. They've got a conflict of interest. By voting yes for this bill, they could personally profit from it. A judge who is overseeing a case where one of the parties in this legal case is someone that they're related to, a family member perhaps. And so they have a conflict of interest there. They may have an interest in seeing this family member get off, or they may have an interest in seeing them punished. But it could really change how they view this particular case, and they couldn't be biased. One of the examples that it comes from pretty recent media is when Joe Biden was vice president of the United States, one of his roles was working with Ukraine, the company. And it just so happened his son was involved in a business there. And so decisions he was making could profit, his son could profit from some of those decisions or benefit from them. And so Joe Biden had a conflict of interest there. He really should have excused himself from dealing with the Ukraine because his son was heavily involved in a company there. Other things that decide why conflicts of interest, that decide why codes of ethics are important is it just sets a set of common standards. And I'll give you an example of these common standards in a moment, but this way everyone within this profession is expected to follow this way. So if doctors follow the Hippocratic Oath, we as patients know that all doctors are supposed to follow this particular code of ethics. They hold these professions accountable. So people who are managing your information, such as doctors, they have to follow what are called the HIPAA rules, which basically says your medical records are private. And even though my son is my son, he's 33 years old, the doctor cannot tell me about his medical conditions unless my son specifically releases that information to me. That information is confidential. How do people keep records, manage the funds and assets of an organization? That's often described in a code of ethics. And if you think about engineers and architects, a lot of their codes of ethics deal with safety. Is the product I'm designing and building going to be safe to use? How do we use technology within our field? And how do we use say for instance, how do we use the vehicles within our field, such as do policemen get to take police cars home? Can they take their kids to school in the police car? Those kinds of things are dealt with. So why do you need a personal code of ethics? I can see why professions need a code of ethics, but why do I as a leader or as an individual need a code of ethics? I can think of three reasons. First, it is a great mental process to think through. Here are the things that I truly believe. These are the things, the virtues that are non-negotiable to me. So, in my life, God comes first, family comes second, job comes third. And, if something is happening with my family and they need me, that's not negotiable to me. I go deal with my family issue. I help my family. Job comes after that. So it really helps you figure out what you believe and what is not negotiable when it comes to ethical behavior. It also, as a leader, communicates to your followers what you stand for. And if they know what you stand for, they are more likely to be more committed to following you and to doing the things you ask them to do, but they also know how you're going to behave in a certain situation. So, if there are budget cuts within your organization, there are some leaders that this has happened to, where their business burned down, and they had all these employees, and rather than laying off these employees, these business leaders committed to keeping these people on the payroll while the business was rebuilt, because they were very committed to their followers and to their employees. And this again just reinforced those employees' commitment to that leader. If you think about the Aggie Code of Honor, that's nothing more than a code of ethics, says an Aggie does not lie, cheat, or steal, or tolerate those who do. If you look at this code, you can see several virtues that it's based on. An Aggie does not lie, cheat, or steal could be based on the virtues of honesty, integrity, and truthfulness. They don't tolerate those who do those things. Tolerance is actually a virtue, as is responsibility. So responsibility could come into this, and I'm either going to report this kind of behavior or I'm going to confront it myself to try to stop this kind of behavior. And so all codes, professional codes, personal codes, are really based in a set of virtues. Virtues used to be extremely important in society, and they were a lot more prevalent in that you could see them in operation in people. Carl Mazer, who was a prominent Utah educator, once said that if you place me behind prison walls, it doesn't matter how thick they are, how high they are, I'm probably going to try to escape. But if you put me in a circle and you ask me to give my word of honor that I would not step out of that circle, would I step out of it? No, I never would. I would die first. I always liked John Wayne. John Wayne's one of my favorite characters. I grew up on his westerns. And I always believe that if John Wayne says so, you better do it. But he says every man needs a code or a creed to live by, no matter what his job is. It provides definition for what he does. The samurai code, it's also called Bushido, that's the code they followed, had these 8 virtues of justice, courage, benevolence, or mercy, politeness, honest sincerity, honor, loyalty, character, and self-control. And to them, these were absolute moral standards. They defined right versus wrong for their society. And if you violated this particular code, the penalty was pretty severe. You had to commit ritual suicide. And they did that, again, as part of their honor. Now, all theories have some problems. They're not perfect, and virtue theory is the same way. Virtues change over time, and you can probably think of some virtues that are less common now than they used to be. It used to be that a lot of business deals were conducted on a man's word and a handshake. Now, they're extremely long legal contracts are necessary because people just don't have that virtue of honesty and integrity like they used to. There's also no clear agreement on what to include in the list of virtues. Plato had 4, Aristotle had 12 virtues. Franklin had 13, and there's an organization called Good Men that have 25 virtues. So there's no definite list of what virtues are acceptable or which ones you should have. And you also have to balance these virtues out. You very often can't have one virtue without another. An example is that courage without good judgment is blind. You're just blindly moving forward. Courage without perseverance doesn't last very long. And courage without a clear sense of your own abilities is very foolhardy. I might have the courage to go hang glide and jump off a cliff with a hang glider, but if I don't have the ability to hang glide, that's probably not a really smart decision. So you kind of have to find a good balance of what virtues you believe in and what you have. How do you get these virtues? You can actually create your own moral identity by simply observing other people that you think have good virtues. Family members, community leaders, maybe people within your school, teachers, principals that have impacted your life. You can also read or watch biographies of people that you think are virtuous. I like to read, but I also know that Netflix and History Channel frequently run biographies and documentaries about, really serious people in history that made an impact. You can also consult spiritual and religious sources. Those also provide some good sources of what virtuous behavior is. Virtues will be very important when you start to complete your personal code of ethics assignment. So right now I encourage you to begin thinking about what are the virtues that you stand for? What are your non-negotiables? So to summarize this, virtues are learned behaviors. They provide the framework for our moral behavior, and they provide the framework for both personal and professional codes of ethics, and they help us create our moral identity.